Good evening. If you can join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, we will be led by HR Director Heather Terrio.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This past Thursday, I was pleased to hear that the governor, in her State of the State address, mentioned Dynamics, who's moved in to a Main Street building, and I understand from Misty Parker that they've started operations and the call center will be running soon. So I'm really pleased that they've come to town. And then this past weekend, we had the Mike Mcgraw Sledding Hill grand opening. And I would like to say a special thank you to Councilor Pease, who helped me move bales of hay to stabilize the microphone and speaker. Thank you, Councilor. Madam Clerk.
Sure. All roll call votes for this meeting will begin with a councilor of Ward 5, and we'll also note for the record that 2 councilors have an excused absence this evening, Councilor LaChapelle and Councilor Gelinas.
Can we have now the minutes?
Sure. The next item is acceptance of the minutes of the February 1st, 2022 meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I move we
Counselor-
accept them as prepared.
I second him.
Councilor Clement, followed by Councilor Pease.
And if there's no discussion, we can call the roll.
Please call the vote.
Sure. Councilor from Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
I've been called much worse.
I'm sorry. Mr. Mayor.
We are now opening it up for public comment, and yes, we're limited to 3 minutes, a total of 15 minutes for public comment. And due to law, we are unable to take comments about city personnel, and they should be referred to our administrator, Heather Hunter. Is there any public comment about city business that is not currently on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move to the first agenda item.
Sure. Item number 1, public hearing on a new application for a liquor license for Bella Dang LLC, doing business as Saigon Pho, 791 Lisbon Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new application for a liquor license for Bella Dang LLC, doing business as Saigon Pho, 791 Lisbon Street.
Second.
Councilor Pease, followed by Councilor Harriman. Discussion? Anyone from the public? Back to the council. Please call the vote.
Council from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Next item.
Item number 2, public hearing on a new application for a liquor license for south of the border 997 Sabata Street. Requested action to authorize the city clerk's office to approve a new application for a liquor license for south of the border 997 Sabata Street.
Councilor Pease? Second. Councilor McCarthy? Any discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for the barbecue pit, 838 Lisbon Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to the barbecue pit, 838 Lisbon Street.
Motion? Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councilor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Item number 4.
Item number 4, public hearing on a renewal application for a special amusement permit for live entertainment for The Cage, 97 Ash Street. Requested action to grant a special amusement permit for live entertainment to The Cage, 97 Ash Street.
So moved. Second.
Counselor Harriman, followed by Counselor Pease. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Passed by a vote of 6-0.
Item number 5.
Item number 5, to continue the public hearing and final passage regarding an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Article 15, pertaining to the licensing of marijuana businesses. Requested action to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
Counselor Pease,
Seconded.
followed by Counselor McCarthy. That is,
Move the question.
yeah. What's the next step here, Kathy? Or Madam Clerk?
Sure, so the motion before you is to continue the public hearing for final passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting. So if there's discussion amongst the council.
Discussion? Counselor Harriman.
Just to clarify, this was the moving all the things from one chapter to a different chapter that we have been discussing?
Yes, Mr. Hediger can jump into, but this is the item that the city council voted the first reading on, and then we got to these, where it was moving to with some of the buffer changes, that was tabled. So we want those to go in tandem, so we are continuing this till the March 1st meeting. So at that point, they will be adopted together.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we need to take public comment on this agenda item?
You can if you'd like. It's not a public hearing, but you can certainly go to the council, to the public if you'd like for any input.
Public comment on this agenda item? Back to the council? Or, so, public comment?
We'll go down to one of the further ones down.
Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Item number 6?
Item number 6, public hearing and first passage regarding an amendment to the Parks and Recreation Ordinance to incorporate the new Mcgraw Park as a recognized city park. Requested action that the proposed amendments to the City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 54, Parks and Recreation, regarding the addition of Mcgraw Park to the list of city parks, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and to continue the public hearing to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a
Move for
motion?
passage.
Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Clement. Councilor McCarthy, apologies, followed by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Council from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Item number 7.
Item number 7, public hearing and first passage regarding an amendment to the zoning and land use code, Article 7, Section 21, pertaining to performance standards for marijuana businesses. I will note that there are 6 different items for requested action. The first item is to amend the ordinance with an updated method of measuring language consistent with the state's adult use marijuana statute.
So moved.
Councilor Pease?
Second.
Councilor Scott? Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
For Counselor from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
I have to ask for a moment just what it is we're voting on.
Sure. So the motion before you is to amend the ordinance with an updated method of measurement language consistent with the state's adult use marijuana statute.
First reading?
Yes.
Yes. The vote is yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0. The second motion is to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of marijuana businesses from the property line of pre-existing schools and child care facilities be 1,000 feet.
So moved.
Motion. Counselor Scott? Counselor Pease? Discussion. And I guess before we have discussion, is there anything you'd like to start off with, Director Hediger?
Not necessarily. I think there was some consensus last time about keeping the buffer or making the buffer the same as the state. So that's what you have before you here with a 1,000-foot buffer from both schools and childcare facilities. Childcare facilities is something above and beyond what the state requires.
Discussion from the council? Counselor Harriman?
At risk of sounding like a broken record, I feel like it's a little bit illogical to try to go, I mean, I know we have to follow the state statutes, but to go above and beyond when we don't even have any regulation around distances from businesses that sell alcohol or tobacco, it just doesn't seem like a logical step to me.
Counselor Clement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would disagree with the counselor from Ward 3. I think that it makes perfect sense to put these restrictions in place. Just because we don't have restrictions on the other matters now doesn't mean we couldn't entertain something in the future if it becomes a problem. I think this industry is still quite new. It is unproven in some regards, and I just don't think we need to leap into this headlong until we understand how deep the water really is. Thank you.
Director Hediger? So now, what is proposed here is 1,000 feet, is that correct?
Correct.
And then what was it before?
750 feet, but we were also measuring it differently. We were measuring along the lines of ordinary travel. This is a buffer from the protected use. So this would be 1,000 feet from the property line of the school or the daycare.
Just to be clear, could this place it closer or further, normally speaking?
It'll likely be further.
Right, yes. Okay. This probably represents an increase in distance from what we currently have.
Correct. Right. This would be a more restrictive than what we currently have.
Thank you. Further discussion from the council? Public comment on this agenda item? When you please go to the podium and state your full name and street address, please.
Hi, I'm Jim Corbin with Teradyne Consultants. Our business is located in Auburn, but we we consult with several businesses of this nature in the Lewiston, Auburn area. I just want to say that I support this mode of measurement as opposed to what it's replacing. I do want to caution the board on increasing that distance. However, I do think that will bring a lot of attention to this particular ordinance and the others that might be considered tonight. That's all.
Thank you. Further public comment? Back to the council. Councilor Harriman?
Just one clarification on the map. It looks like, is that Martell School there? That's sort of southeast of Franklin Pasture? That's,
Probably. If, I can pull it up for you. Maybe. And you're looking at the school buffer, correct?
Correct, yeah,
Bear with me, I lost a tool here.
so it would be on, I guess it's page
Oh.
4? The one with the light blue and the yellow.
Sorry.
So, a little further. Yeah, that right there.
Right, so that, correct, that is Martell right now. So we still have that as a school. We still have that as a park as well, which is another discussion or another one of the actions to vote upon here. As the council knows, that property is slated to become housing at some point here in the future. So when that change happens, we'll no longer have a buffer there from a school perspective. There may still be a buffer from a playground perspective because one of the agreements was to maintain that play space out back. Whether or not we move forward with a buffer is one of your other items here tonight.
Okay, thank you. So it's just sort of like a technicality that it's still listed as a school.
Correct, correct.
Now, I understand that businesses that are already in existence would become non-conforming, but they would still be allowed to operate.
That's correct.
Okay. And then it appears that, what about businesses that have pending license applications?
Very popular question lately. Yes, if they get all their licenses in, if they get a complete license application into the clerks, if they get a complete building permit application into planning and code enforcement, prior to the effective date of whatever is adopted, then they would be in the process and they would be considered legally non-conforming if the changes impact them.
And I guess just for my reference, so you have business locations pending license. So they could be at any stage in that, like,
Correct,
you know,
correct.
like 2 items missing or just taking it out or,
Right.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
and with the map, how it shows pending, some of those might actually be renewals as well. So we don't necessarily make a distinction from the licensing perspective. So when you see on the map, and I think I made reference in the memo too, as to permitted or pending, some of them may actually be existing establishments that have licenses that are in the process of being renewed.
thank you for that clarification. Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, may you please read the motion again?
Sure, the motion is to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of marijuana businesses from the property line of pre-existing schools and childcare facilities be 1,000 feet.
Thank you.
Make the motion.
It's already on the
It's
floor.
already on.
Yeah, yeah,
I
sorry.
simply wanted to clarify what we were voting on. Further discussion at this point? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
And Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed by vote of 5 to 1. So the next item is item number 3, to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of marijuana businesses from the property line of public parks, playgrounds, or recreational facilities be 100 feet.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Scott.
I'll second it.
Councilor McCarthy. Discussion from the council? Councilor Harriman.
Just to jog my memory, could someone remind us what the current buffer is?
Sure. If, right now, it's 750 feet, again, measured from the ordinary course of travel. Parks, playgrounds were into the same category as schools and daycares. So, given the conversation we had at the last council meeting, there was some discussion about breaking that out. So we've since broke that out into a separate category, just public parks, playgrounds, and recreational facilities as defined by the city's ordinance. And then there was discussion about whether or not we were being too restrictive or not restrictive enough. So what you have before you is a 100-foot buffer. The map that's currently on the screen that Councilor Harriman was looking at before, that took into consideration setbacks from parks. I sent you folks, or I believe administration may have forwarded an email yesterday of a new map that I got, and that's what I handed to you folks too, and I can't imagine that you were gonna make any sense of it because it's so small and tiny. But that shows a 100-foot buffer, and if necessary, I can pull that up on the screen to give you folks a sense of what's being discussed here. Let me go. There seemed to be discussion about downtown, given the number of parks downtown, and I guess I'll just zoom in on that area and see where the conversation goes. So everything in green is a park identified by the city, and then this magenta, pink, purple color, that would be the 100-foot buffer. So as defined, if you were within 100 feet of the property line of any of these establishments, or excuse me, any of these parks, you would not be able to operate a marijuana business. Again, currently it's 750 feet measured from, measured by the course of travel. So somebody walking from Kennedy Park down the sidewalks, we would measure that 750 feet to the door of the marijuana business. Problematic, it's not a great way to measure things. The council's already agreed to change the way we measure things as a buffer. The question for you folks is, should there be a buffer, and what would that buffer be? And right now it's proposed to be 100 feet.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. And before that, the 750 walking distance, does the 100-foot buffer, this seems like a big difference, right? We're looking, I know it's walking and buffer, but does that extend it more with a 100-foot buffer? Or does it actually put it a little less than a 750 by walking distance?
It'll be less restrictive.
So we're looking for, we just voted to approve 1,000 feet at schools, but we're looking at 100 feet for parks where kids are at also.
Correct.
I'm not sure that I would want to go as low as 100 feet. That's just my personal opinion, but I would ask others on the council to give their opinion on that as well.
Councilor McCarthy?
I agree, Councilor Scott. I think a compromise would be 500 feet. I know 1,000 feet was really zoomed, covered a lot more territory than I think we intended, but, you know, we're trying to encourage kids and families to go out and play in parks and stuff like that. So I think compromise, amend this to 500 feet would be amenable to me.
Councilor Clement?
Mr. Mayor, I would concur with the councilors from Wards 1 and 2 on that. 500 feet should be the limit.
Councilor Harriman?
Well, first off, I want to thank Director Hediger and Jim Ward for making all these maps for us, because it is incredibly helpful to visualize this. Also, we have a 500-foot buffer on page, I believe it's page 3. Would you be able to show that on the screen?
Yep, it's actually up there right now, and it's the same area that we were just talking about with the 100-foot buffer. So if you look at the colors again, the green is your parks that are the protected use. The lighter blue area is 500 feet, and then this purple pink area, someone's gonna have to help me with my colors, that would be 1,000 feet. And this is what we presented last time. So if you do the 1,000 feet, you can see, I mean, it shuts things down considerably in the downtown, and I think that's where the discussion was going last time with the council is that too restrictive?
Councilor Harriman?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the 500 feet, personally looking at this, is still incredibly restrictive, especially in the downtown area. It basically covers, I mean, almost everything but the canal there and a couple of the mill buildings. Yeah, it just seems far too restrictive, in my opinion. I could get behind the 100-foot buffer. That seems reasonable enough.
My concern is that, I realize that 500 is less than 1,000, but downtown, I'm not sure that it makes a functional difference. you know, the canal is there, and some of the lots may not be, you know, some of the blocks, yes, it's a little bit more space, 500 versus 1,000, but I don't think it makes a material difference just by looking at this map.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Clement?
if I could question the city clerk, did the council not pass here 2, 3 years ago an ordinance about smoking in our public parks?
We did, yes, correct.
Okay, so we're regulating smoking in parks. You know, I think 500 feet, I'm amenable to some other figure. Certainly 100 feet is not sufficient in my estimation. If the council would entertain, say, 250 feet, 300 feet, whatever, we can,
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify, Councilor Clement, that wasn't in all parks, that was just in some parks.
that was basically the downtown area, though.
I know it was the Mark Parody Park. I don't know offhand, without looking up in the ordinance, if it was all city parks, but it was definitely the Mark Parody Park, so it's in some parks. I would have to confirm if it was in all parks, though.
I think,
don't
as
wanna
I
give you the wrong
recall, there was
information.
something about the Lisbon Street area as well.
Okay.
Around the library, parts of Lisbon Street, Dufresne Plaza, that sort of thing. Yep. I mean, if the council would come up with an alternative, I don't think 100 feet is sufficient. I would personally like to see 500, but I could agree on something less than that. I just think we need to keep this stuff away from areas where we're trying to bring the public in, particularly in our downtown, which is really what we're trying to do, is to make this an area attractive to bring people into. I don't want to be looked upon as the pot capital of Maine, and I thank you.
Councillor Pease, would you, nothing? Yeah. Councillor Scott?
Thank you. So I would be amendable to 250 as well. I don't think 100 is enough. I've had a lot of conversations with constituents on this. They want to see a bit bigger than 100, but I'm going to make a comment about something that happened to me at the sledding park this weekend. While sledding with my grandson, and there were hundreds of families there with children, I found something on the ground right there. It was a pack of cigarettes. It did not have any cigarettes in it. I brought it over to Chief St. Pierre. I was very concerned. It was loaded with marijuana. And it smelled, and it was right there. And any child, I feel that I was lucky that it was me that picked it up and gave it to the police. And anybody could have picked it up. And I find this, I'm concerned about this. I have no qualms about people smoking marijuana for medical reasons. I have no qualms about people smoking marijuana on their personal property in their personal time, like having a drink of alcohol. But I am very concerned about it being around kids, and so I think this is something that we need to look at, and I would be in favor of, like I said, the 250 instead of the 100, if that's something that's more amendable to the council, but I don't think that 100 is enough. Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy?
Mr. Hediger, what, in your opinion, what would be the equivalent of what is there now? The 750, measuring it that way, or the straight line from the property line? What would, in your best guess, be the equivalent of that 750 that's currently there?
I'd want to check instead of just guessing, really, because a lot of times it's, again, because it's the ordinary course of travel, if we're walking around a long block of a downtown where there aren't a lot of cross streets or something, it's much different than when I have some alleys or you know, smaller areas to get through. So I think it's going to vary downtown because you have a number of parks like the Frame Plaza. Anybody that's within 750 feet walking distance of that, it's been effective. That park has been very effective, for better for worse, in limiting the number of establishments in that area. We get lots of inquiries about having establishments in that area. So I guess I'd want to get back to you to give you a better guesstimate with that. But again, I think part of it's going to depend upon the actual lay of the land and where our streets are. And if I'm out on Lisbon Street, it's, you know, it's clearly just I'm walking in one direction. I don't have the opportunity to make turns and whatnot.
Okay. Because I know while I was out campaigning, one of the things that I heard over and over from the constituents in my ward was that they were very concerned about the expansion of all of the marijuana facilities in the city and giving the city a black eye. Some people it's a black eye, some people it's not. I don't fault anybody that wants to consume, but I don't think it should be out there front and center in front of the kids. So I'm against making, just looking at from my constituents' perspective, they wouldn't want it lessened at all because that opens the door for more. So that's why I'm trying to get an equivalent so that we could, and to me, I think 500 on average would be the equivalent of 750 walking distance in some cases. Downtown's another whole ball of wax, but not all the parks are downtown.
Yeah, I guess to your point, certainly 100 feet is much less restrictive. I would think 500 feet is going to be closer to it, just kind of looking at this this area here, and I realize some of these dots are huge, right? These big dots represent marijuana businesses, so it's kind of hiding where Dufresne Plaza is underneath that. But I can tell you just from experience in talking with businesses, people have often asked about being within this 500-foot area here, which has not worked when using the 750. So there's probably some overlap between those two numbers.
So can I make an amendment, offer an amendment to change that from 100 to 500?
Yes.
Yes.
Second the motion to amend.
Discussion on the current motion? Oh, public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, what is permissible for discussion under the current motion?
So the discussion would be limited to the 500 feet.
Whether that was appropriate or not?
Right, yes.
Discussion from the council? Councilor Harriman?
Again, I just see that the 500 as being far too restrictive. Just looking at the map here, it really cuts out a huge part of the downtown from any of these businesses, excluding the ones who are already there. I wonder if it's at all possible to, I don't know if it would get too complicated, but to have a separate, maybe within the downtown zone have one standard, and then outside the downtown zone have a different standard for parks that are in the two zones. But yeah, I just feel like 500 is just shutting off most of the prime downtown area.
Whether it's easy or confusing, yes, we could do something like that. We could define specific parks and have specific setbacks from those parks that differ throughout the community.
Further discussion? Councilor Clement?
Mr. Mayor, I would add, from my viewpoint, that would be too confusing. We're trying to simplify things. That's what brought us to this point. I'm all in favor of 500 and will vote in favor of the amendment. I ask that you move the question.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Sure, and so just for clarification, we are voting on the 500 item for the amendment. So Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by vote of 5-1. Now, the motion before you is the item number 3, as it was, to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of marijuana businesses from the property line of public parks, playgrounds, or recreational facilities be 500 feet.
So moved.
Second the motion.
Councilor Scott, followed by Councilor Clement. Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by vote of 6-0. The next item is motion number 4, to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of a marijuana business from the property line of a residential use in a residential district be 100 feet.
So moved.
Counselor
Second.
Scott, followed by Counselor McCarthy. Discussion from the council. Counselor Harriman?
Just to clarify, we currently don't have a buffer from residential uses in residential districts?
We do. It's 300 feet, again, measured from the main entrance of the building, main entrance of the business to the main entrance of the dwelling.
So, the motion that we passed in number 1 to update the measurement language would, it would change that to 300 feet from property line to property line.
That is what the motion was, but I would suggest that was a blanket motion to endorse how we want to measure things. This specific change is to change that. So if you were not to change the, I would suggest that you would still have to amend this specific item number 4 as the clerk read. Because right now it's written as 300 feet along the ordinary course of travel. You could amend it, similar to what you just did, and say the unamended motion to have the distance be 300 feet versus the 100 that's proposed.
But I guess what I'm confused about is the change we just made under number 1 would impact what we currently have, what we're currently considering under number 4, correct?
It would. If you folks didn't act on any of these other items, there would be a conflict once again, because we're looking to change the measurement from a buffer to a buffer from door to door.
Okay, so if we didn't do anything for the residential, we would still be measuring door to door?
Correct.
It wouldn't fall under that change we made on number 1?
I don't believe so, because the language is specific. It would still be specific. We haven't changed anything with respect to that setbacks from residential dwellings.
Okay.
I can appreciate the confusion there, because we were trying to, it seemed as though we had consensus from the council last time as to how to change the measurement. So the thought was, let's have a motion on that to agree that the measurement means should be changed. That said, if the council didn't want to change it with respect to this one item, that's certainly in your purview.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Counselor Scott?
I just want to affirm that I am comfortable with the 100-foot buffer for the neighborhood zones, around the neighborhoods.
Counselor Harriman?
Would Director Hediger be able to pull up that map of the buffer around residential zones that was sent to us, just for the benefit of the public, really?
I think. So this was all set up, and then I closed it. I'm not sure it's going to be here.
Keep holding out, maybe he'll up the ante.
I know, that's what I'm thinking, you know? Okay. So there's a couple of screens here. I think the one that Councilor Harriman is referring to is this one here. So let me, unfortunately, I don't have the same tools at hand. But, can I zoom in some more? Yep. Oh, my God. If I'm driving you guys crazy, the feeling's mutual. Oh my God. Trying to get to a spot where we'll all know where we are type thing. Good, this is great. This is where we left off last time. So this is Sabata Street. The red property here is what was Elizabeth Ann's. That's the humble farmer now, I believe, marijuana retail. So the council asked for a map that would show the buffers from residentially zoned properties that contain residential uses. So all the blue properties you see, these dark blue properties, are properties that are located in a residential zoning district. This pink area is a 100-foot buffer. And we talked about the narrowness of the zoning districts, this being Sabata Street. So one of the challenges Lewiston has as you get closer to town along our major arterials is the zoning is rather narrow. So with that in mind, if there is going to be a 100-foot buffer, you can see these white areas then would be the areas that you could have a marijuana business if the council adopted the language as proposed. If you have a building that is cut off by a buffer, sort of like this one here across the street from the humble farmer, I want to say that's probably the Rite Aid or the Walgreens there. My understanding is the way the state would regulate that for schools is that you can't do anything within that portion of the building that is within the buffer, but the section outside of the buffer actually could be a marijuana business. So if you had like a strip mall and half the mall was within the buffer, great, that's off limits, but the other half of that strip mall could be contain marijuana businesses. So this is a pretty good example of an area where we have a narrow zoning district that would be impacted by buffers. Again, right now, the way it's measured in Elizabeth Ann's is actually a good, I say Elizabeth Ann's, Humble Farmer is a good example in that the way we would measure that now, and the reason it's permitted there is it would be 750 feet from the door of this business, wherever the door is on that business, and you would measure to the nearest residential property. So you're going to be measuring, you know, I forget which street that is there, but then you're, Charles Street, thank you. You're measuring Charles Street down East Avenue, trying to figure out, are you measuring at right angles? Are you going at crosswalks? Are you jaywalking? What are you doing type thing to get there? Regardless, they met the 750 feet. That's why they're there today. If you adopted 100 feet, they would still be there today. If I zoom in more, the buffer goes through that property, but it doesn't go through the structure. So they would still be a conforming property if you folks adopted a 100-foot buffer. We presented last time, there's another map in your council package that's actually the page before this that showed some specific examples. You know, that showed the difference of a 50-foot buffer and a 100-foot buffer. This relates to the next item on the agenda, where the yellow line was the ordinary course of travel, the red line would be a 100-foot buffer, blue line's a 50-foot buffer, and these are all the properties that are in the residential zoning district. And this is a good example of why we want to change it, because, for example, if you follow the yellow line that's there now and they say that they meet the 300 or 350 feet, this property, as an example, has two curb cuts. There's one curb cut sort of like where the cursor is now, and there's another curb cut further down here. If they were too close, they could simply just say, well, great, city, I'm going to put up I'm going to close off that curb cut, and I'm going to use the other curb cut, and I'm going to gain the distance necessary. From our perspective, what's really changed? Nothing. I mean, the business is still there. We're just changing, you know, how we're measuring it. So that's why we're looking to clean up and have the buffer from the protected use itself, whatever that number may be.
In the previous map, I noticed that depending on where the residential property is, the buffer actually crossed the street and was in part of the land on the other side of the street.
That could absolutely happen depending on how narrow the commercial zoning district is.
Councilor Harriman?
And just another thing that came up, so some of these are colored red, but as you mentioned with the Elizabeth Ann property, it's just colored red because the property line happens to be within the buffer. Is that?
Everything that's colored red on this map is just highlighting the property that has a marijuana business on it. It's just identifying the entire lot.
And what is the green then?
The green.
I think
Oh, everything else, I guess, on the map, maybe.
Those are parks, aren't they?
No, I think
No,
there
in
was.
your-
Oh, like down here, okay. But those would be,
I think there was a key in the.
yeah, there is. Marijuana business proposed versus existing businesses. So those are some proposed locations that we have marijuana. And so that goes to the earlier comment about how we might have pending licenses that are both renewals or brand-new businesses. So, for example, this is one of the Androscoggin Millbach building. That is a new business that's being proposed there versus some of these other greens you see are established businesses. They've been there for a number of years and they're just renewing their existing licenses. Versus a red one is they're current with their license.
And the red, according to the key, means they were within the 100-foot buffer.
Yes, exactly. And there's a handful of them on there. When you go down Outer Sabata Street, I think there was another.
There's several.
Exactly. When you go further down, I wish I had a better zoom tool here. This is the intersection of Old Green Road, Randall Road, and Sabata Street, where so that business there, and actually that's a good example. Let me zoom in on that more. So residential line right behind it. That building, you can imagine this line going right through the building, right? That 100-foot buffer going right through the building. Chances are that entire building would be off limits to a marijuana business. So they'll be legally non-conforming if the council approved the language as it exists today. As you go further down to the mayor's point, you can see the buffer actually goes right across the street there because the zoning district gets really narrow. So, that entire area is off limits. And we continue to have some non-conforming establishments as you go further down.
And I think I noticed that even the brand-new one that's not even open yet would become non-conforming at the former McDonald's site.
Probably, yeah. Because again, our zoning is very narrow.
You're talking about Emerald River?
Correct.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, on Outer Lisbon.
So that's Emerald River right there. So yeah, I mean, maybe a small portion of the front portion of that property would be okay. But that would be a situation if the property was vacant and we adopted a 100-foot buffer, we would actually have to have them give us a site plan that shows us, okay, what portion of your property is actually going to be allowed to have the business on it. The rear portion's off limits, great. You have to be 100 feet off that property line. Show us that you're going to be 100 feet off that property line.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I feel like that the 100 feet, it's an improvement over what we have, but to me, it just seems like it's too restrictive still. I realize the ones that are already here would just become non-conforming, but it just seems kind of silly, especially for a business that's not even open yet, that we'd be making them non-conforming by doing this. It seems too restrictive to me.
Further discussion from the council? Councilor McCarthy?
Is there any negative impact on that property if they're just considered non-conforming?
We talked a little bit at one point about if a property becomes abandoned, if the use becomes abandoned. So if for some reason any of these non-conforming uses were abandoned for more than 24 months, then technically they're not supposed to be reestablished. The idea is that you're supposed to bring the property into conformance then at that point. It's a little different if you're marketing the property, right? Like maybe the property is available and you're actively marketing it, but if people walk away from a property, it's derelict structure, nobody's there, then the city looks at that as an opportunity to say, okay, that use has been extinguished, how can we bring in a use that's actually permitted and meets the code requirements?
But that would only be if it's abandoned, you said.
Correct, right.
Okay.
Yep. And non-conformists, they're not limited to marijuana businesses, right? I mean, we have dozens of non-conforming uses throughout the community where this is not a uncommon term or situation throughout the city.
Public comment?
Hi, Jim Corbin with Teradyne again. And again, I support this way of measurement. However, I'm concerned about enforceability of the way it's interpreted right now for the use for a building that may be split by this buffer. How is that mapped out on a site plan? And how is that enforced going on, especially with mixed-use businesses and buildings? Another example would be parking. Say it's a strip mall. How do you enforce that? Would that pertain to the customers? And how do you differentiate between customers, between the various businesses, and other uses that support that business that may not be considered part of the marijuana use? I see that being a bit difficult. That's all.
Thank you. Further public comment?
I'm Tyler Netto. I live over at 10 Nimitz Street. I would just have to say I think it's no different than a school zone. If you're driving through a school zone, they're all a little bit different, and they're different sizes. I feel like if we have the ones that are already there that are non-conforming, you've got plenty of them there. I mean, how many more do you need to fit into that little area? We really need to smash in 10 more businesses along the same street that already have 10. If they keep their license up and they sell it, they transfer it, whatever, you're still going to have those businesses. I think it's kind of a good way to keep a cap on it too. We have so many dealerships, so many Dunkin' Donuts, all that same stuff. So that's what I think about it.
Thank you. Further public comment? Back to the council for discuss. Oh, yep. Please step to the podium.
Hi, I'm Teresa Baudet. I live at 12 Nimitz Street. And I'm just looking at that map that you were looking at a little bit earlier that shows the current buffer with the walking from the front door of the address at 1046 Main Street to the closest residential house. I just want to make sure I'm looking at this and understanding this correctly. So that would, you're discussing whether you should change that buffer, which thank you. The blue line going around that house is 50 feet buffer. And is this conversation about changing that to 100 feet? Is that correct? Okay. So does that mean if you change it to 100 feet, that would not allow, for example, the zoning to change the highway business to include marijuana growth at that location? Is that how I'm understanding it? No.
Director Hediger.
Two things. Just point of clarification, the standard is not 50 feet right now. That was thrown on there as an example of 50 feet or 100 feet. The standard that exists right now is the yellow line that you see, how we measure from door to door.
Okay.
We may be overlapping discussions, agenda items right now. But to be clear, if there's a 100-foot buffer around a property, a residentially zoned property, that portion of the property cannot be used. So if this ordinance went through, just imagine everything on the inside of this red line here on this property would be off limits to a marijuana business. Anything on the outside of this line, where my cursor is here, that could still be a marijuana business.
So changing the buffer, if that's what you would do, from the door to door to 50 or 100 feet is not going to prevent a marijuana business going in that location.
correct, if I'm answering that question.
Thank you, Director Ettinger.
Keep in mind, and again, I think the constituent's concern is probably regarding the next agenda item where there's a rezoning. But the question is still applicable in the sense how it would work for any other property where, you know, a property is split zoned and you use the course of measurement. It's not necessarily, as drafted, not going to prohibit a business from occurring on a property. It may limit a portion of that property.
All right, I'll come back at number 7 then.
Thank you. Yes, I took that as simply an example for this current agenda item. Further public comment? Back to the council for discussion. Councilor McCarthy.
One question, the conversation about parking lot came up. Is that also restricted? So they couldn't use it for parking, or is it just for the building that would occupy the property?
From the building that occupies the
So
property.
the parking wouldn't be impacted whatsoever?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't necessarily disagree with his concerns, and we've had this conversation with the state as far as, especially if you had one large building that was split off, and how do you differentiate, you know, the section of the building that fits within the buffer and which doesn't? The applicant is going to have to demonstrate that to us. They currently provide a floor plan to us when they go through the licensing process. So ideally, if and when we do the reinspection, if there's a change in the floor plan from what they provided before, that should be enough of a flag for staff to say, hey, time out here, something has changed. You moved a wall. Did you move the wall in the right direction or the wrong direction? It'll be a case-by-case scenario. I'm hoping that doesn't come up too often, quite frankly, and I don't know that it will, but if it becomes a problem, I'll be back.
Thanks for the warning.
Yeah.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk, can you please read the motion again?
Sure. The motion is to amend the ordinance such that the distance requirement of a marijuana business from the property line of a residential use in a residential district be 100 feet.
No further discussion from the council?
This will be just for the first reading, correct? Move the question, please.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0. The next item, motion number 5, to amend the ordinance such that the minimum distance between a marijuana store or dispensary and any 2 other marijuana stores and/or dispensaries be a 500-foot buffer from the property line of proposed marijuana store or dispensary.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Councilor Scott?
Second?
Councilor McCarthy? Discussion? Councilor Harriman?
So currently, we have it set up so that, and I'm blanking on that. Would you be able to?
Sure. So again, ordinary course of travel. You can have 2 establishments right next to each other, but the third establishment has to be 500 feet away from either one of those 2 establishments.
Along the
Ordinary course of travel. That language we took from existing language that was regulating bars in the downtown. Maybe that works in the downtown, but it doesn't really work again in these other areas where you're trying to do ordinary course of travel along our major arterials. We've kept the distance at 500 feet. That is more restrictive. Hands down, it is more restrictive than going the ordinary course of travel. If you're going to put a 500-foot buffer around 2 establishments downtown, yeah, you're going to have fewer establishments throughout the community as a result of that.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment? Back to the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
No.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 5-1. So then, everything that you've amended is now going to be compressed into the master set of ordinance amendments for this. So the motion before you, which will be incorporating everything that is passed, is that amendments to the zoning and land use code, Article 7, Section 21, pertaining to performance standards for marijuana businesses, receive first passage by a roll call vote, and that the public hearing on said ordinance be continued to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a motion? Counselor Pease? Counselor McCarthy? Discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 7.
Oops.
I'm sorry. Sorry, my fault. I'm sorry. Ward 5 is a yes.
Yes,
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
and Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Motion passed a vote of 6 to 0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hediger. Madam Clerk, am I to understand that we're on item number 8?
Yes, item number 8, to continue the public hearing and first passage to amend the conditional rezoning agreement for the property at 1046 Main Street in the Highway Business District to allow as permitted uses marijuana stores, marijuana cultivation, manufacturing, testing, nurseries, and registered dispensaries. Requested action, to continue the public hearing for first passage to the next regularly scheduled city council meeting.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Counselor Pease? Counselor McCarthy? Discussion? Counselor Scott?
Thank you. I would just ask for a clarification. If we, and what was just previously discussed, know that this particular buffer that we just voted in, even though it's first reading and we still have to do another vote on it, would not change the effect of this particular business because we saw the map. I would request that we make a vote on this tonight and get this off the table so that the people in my ward know what's going to happen with this business. I have had countless conversations with folks in my ward, countless phone calls, countless emails, and I would like to see us move forward with this particular item and make a vote on it. Thank you.
Mayor?
Am I to understand that you would like to decide on this item before the ordinance is set?
Yes, because we just discussed that the ordinance would not affect this particular business. I think that we should discuss it, yes.
Director Hediger, would the council, would be within the council's purview during, would that be a second reading at that point, Madam Clerk?
This will be first reading. because
Right,
it
but
did not receive-
the next one would be a second reading.
The next
And
meeting
it
would-
would be possible to make changes at that point, or no?
You could, to this agenda item itself you're referencing?
No, the previous agenda item.
Yes, you could make changes at the second reading. If the council desired, yes, you could make changes. To everything that we just talked about, correct. So somebody potentially could make a motion at the next meeting to undo everything that we just talked about.
That would be my concern, Councilor Scott.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Clement?
could I ask Councilor Scott, is your intention to kill this? If it is, then I would move that we postpone indefinitely.
So, yes, it is. Like I said, and I have constituents sitting in the audience here tonight that have been at other meetings. They have been calling, they're paying very close attention to this particular issue. And I, for one, would like to settle it as sooner rather than later so that they don't have to come to another meeting and sit through another couple hours of discussion. That would be my preference.
Mr. Mayor, could we inquire of the city clerk if we postpone this indefinitely, if it would have the effect of killing?
Madam Clerk, can a motion be postponed indefinitely?
Yes, a motion to postpone indefinitely is allowed in Robert's rules, and the impact of a motion to postpone indefinitely is to kill the item.
Then I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Just, Madam Clerk, at this point, are we voting on the motion?
Well, so the motion is on the floor, and the motion was moved by Councilor Pease, seconded by Councilor McCarthy, to put the original motion as printed in your book on the floor. So that's what's on the floor. That's the main motion. And then Councilor Clement, and I missed who seconded it. I apologize.
Councilor
Thank you.
McCarthy.
Councilor McCarthy, thank you. So now it's been moved and seconded to postpone the matter indefinitely, which would kill the pending motion before you.
And what would be appropriate for discussion on this current motion?
The merits of the pending question, which is, do you want to postpone indefinitely? Do you feel that you should be not discussing this matter and disposing of it immediately, or not?
Discussion from the council?
Excuse me, Madam Clerk. Can I withdraw my motion to delay this?
Not at this point, because there's another motion that's kind of come on top of that, which was Councilor Clement's.
Right, thank you.
Further discussion? Would it be appropriate to take public comment on this current motion?
I think that would be fine.
Public comment on this current motion? And before we proceed with public comment, sir, Madam Clerk, can you please, I guess, explain what would be appropriate for public comment on this current motion?
Sure. So the motion to postpone indefinitely is debatable. This isn't a public hearing. This was set up to just basically continue the public hearing to the next meeting. But per council norms, it's the mayor's discretion to go and have public input at every item if you'd like, which we've been doing.
And, sorry, just for a further point of clarification, a member of the public could comment pretty much on any topic relating to this? Or could comment in, I guess, we do not need to simply talk about whether it is to postpone indefinitely or not.
That is the motion pending before the council. I would say you would have some discretion and latitude, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to hear public comment, but that really would be at your discretion.
Okay. Please proceed, sir. And please, if you could please state your name and address.
Gerard Gardner, 11 MacArthur Avenue, Lewiston. One of my main concern is the trafficking. If we're going to have a marijuana mall down there instead of just a store, Main Street is still 2 lanes. Coming out of Nimitz Street, we have to be very, very careful taking a right-hand turn and going downtown, because there's a knoll on the other side of us coming down to Main Street. And we've had many accidents there because the trailer trucks, the big trucks, a lot of them are coming down at 55, 60 miles an hour, and there's nothing coming. We pull out, and that's right in back of us tooting. Sometimes they can go around us, and one of these days they won't. We'll come down. And I just also think that the marijuana plantation, when you want to call it, is going to be detrimental to the values of our homes. Because we got 150 homes there right next to marijuana. It's not just a store. So I would hope that you people would vote no right from the start. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Hi, Jim Corbin with Teradyne Consultants again. What we're looking to do is add a use currently allowed within the Highway Business District, for which this conditionally zoned parcel, half of which is modeled after. This is a use that was not within the Highway Business District when the parcel was conditionally zoned. All the uses within the Highway Business District at that time were allowed within this conditionally zoned parcel. Amendments since then have been to allow uses that have been added within the Highway Business District. And the last time that this parcel was, its conditionally zoned use was amended, again, this use was not present. So we're just looking to align the additionally zoned parcel with the district for which it's modeled after. This is a use that is allowed directly across the street within the Highway Business District there. And it's consistent with other uses along Main Street. As far as concerns about traffic, this is a parcel that has been in use for many, many years as a commercial property with customers coming in and out. Imagine any any application for change of use would consider site distances along Main Street in either direction. And the other uses that are currently allowed for this conditionally zoned property would probably include uses that are even more traffic heavy. Again, those would have to be considered at a site plan. We strongly urge council to consider what we've put before you. We think it has value to the community and is in line with what the conditionally zoned parcel was created for in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again, Teresa Baudet, 12 Nimitz Street. You know, now that I see that what this buffer means that you're talking about, I think of this neighborhood, I've been there 34 years. My property abuts this property that you're talking about. There's 1,000 feet buffer for schools and daycares. I take care of my 2 little grandchildren, 2 and 5 years old, every week. I'm not comfortable with I have nothing against marijuana, medicinal or recreational. I'm concerned about manufacturing. I'm concerned about the smell. I'm concerned about security lights right in my backyard. If you take that 250 feet door to door, that brings you to my back door. I've been hit at that corner, turning at Main and Nimitz, totaled my car. The businesses that have been there over 34 years, let's see, Lessard's, Windows, I don't know what they're doing for business, but there's not a lot of business going on there. Lawnmower place, I can't remember all the places that's changed, but there's never been a business there that's been really busy. I'm going to assume that this is going to be a pretty busy business, but I'm really more concerned about the residential neighborhood, the children, the families, 150 houses there, and the property value of my property. I know that there are people that aren't happy about this in this neighborhood, and I appreciate, sorry, I forgot your name, Linda Scott, right? Right, yeah. I appreciate your standing up and speaking up for our area. So I'm thinking this should be 1,000 feet in this, you know, against this neighborhood. That I didn't realize that picture showed that you could still have a marijuana dispensary and manufacturing, whatever, I don't know what they're going to do with it, but if they do that, I don't want that in my backyard. And I know a lot of people don't. I wish there were more people here, but we, Tyler and Gerard, we're really close to that property. I mean, I can walk out my backyard and step onto that property. I don't know, when you said postpone indefinitely, is that the term you used? Does that mean it's off the table and a marijuana, the highway business isn't going to change to include marijuana? Is that my understanding?
The original intent of the motion, which is a conditional rezoning agreement to change the zoning, is that right? Yes, yes, correct.
So I vote for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler Netto, 10 Nimitz Street. I just have to say, I'm only 28 years old, but the community's been there since, I'm assuming, the 40s or so. I don't think that little business area was developed for this kind of business. I mean, I don't know. And I drive around for a living, as you can probably see. I drive by all these businesses. Depending on what they're doing with it, you may not notice it. Some of the places, they're within their guidelines and they stink really bad. And my property is right against their property. I have nothing against these kind of facilities, marijuana, none of that stuff. It's all legalized now, so people are doing it within the limits of the law. I just feel that it's gonna depreciate the value of my property, and I'm gonna have to look at this. It's right through the woods. I mean, it is their property. They can do what they want. I feel like I won't be the only one in these shoes. Start amending it for this business place. We're gonna start amending it. The word's gonna get out. Everyone's gonna amend it and go to the city of Lewiston to get an amendment for their business. And they're gonna wanna start doing this. It might not just happen with, it could happen with anything, but, that's how I feel. I mean, it's a tough, you have some people come up from out of state, you've got family over, whatever, you're gonna have to try to explain this facility that's right next to your house. And I don't know, I feel like if you were anybody involved, if you were the one that was gonna be less than 100 feet, where my back porch is, where I can sit, where I just bought my wife a beautiful hot tub. We're gonna be sitting in that hot tub, you can see the building right there. If it ends up being a grow facility and then we're back there and we may have to smell it when there may be lights on at all hours of the day and night, that's something we're gonna have to live with. And I feel like if everybody can get on the same page here, we can, I don't know, I don't feel like I want it, so.
Thank you. Further public comment? Back to the council for discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard from some of the same constituents of Councillor Scott and Councillor McCarthy. I've taken a look at this situation out there. I do have some background in law enforcement, albeit only 45 years. I think that the proper course of business for us tonight is to postpone this indefinitely and kill it. I'm not in favor of spot zoning. If it doesn't work this week, we come in, we try something else next week, and it's a never-ending battle. So let's kill it and get it off the table. Thank you.
Councillor Harriman.
I just wanted to point out, I appreciate all the public comment, and I read all the emails and letters that were received. It seemed like the main issues that came up were traffic, noise, smell, and light. And I just wanted to point out that what is currently allowed at that parcel, retail businesses are allowed, restaurants are allowed. I don't imagine that a marijuana business would have more traffic necessarily than any other kind of retail business. As far as odor, we have a very restrictive ordinance on marijuana businesses. There's no odor allowed off the premises. And then as far as lights and noise, I mean, car dealerships and car garages are allowed there as well in that parcel. So to me, it seems like it would be similar to other permitted uses. However, I know it's right next to a neighborhood. It's already conditionally zoned. So I think that the neighbor's input is important, and there are a lot more neighbors than there are that one parcel. So I'm glad you all spoke up tonight, and thank you for bringing your concerns to us.
Director Hediger, has the city received, because the city has other grow facilities within the city limits, correct?
Correct.
And then have we received, I don't know how you term this, complaints about smell?
Just a handful. Literally a handful, where we've approached the business owner afterwards, say that we may have gotten a complaint. I think I mentioned last time, most of the complaints we get end up being from residential properties that have grows either in their backyard or maybe in their house, and they're not taking any measures to, control the odor.
Oh, okay, not necessarily from a commercial facility.
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCarthy?
I had a few red flags on this when I was looking through all of the information that was provided. The first one is I question why it was conditionally zoned to begin with, being right next door to a residential neighborhood the way it is, and that being any other businesses either across the street or much further down Main Street. I also have, I don't like constantly rezoning properties. When the people bought this property, they knew what the zoning was. It's not like we're changing the zoning on them, so they're losing value. So they're not, to me, allowing it is gonna hurt the property owners around it, and increase the value for the people who bought it, and we shouldn't be hurting the residents of the city for that. Another red flag was I looked at the petition that they had signatures for bringing this to the council, and there was, out of the whole 100 and some odd houses in that neighborhood, there was one resident further away that had signed this petition. Everybody else is scattered across the city. So it's obvious that the neighbors are not for it at all. And when you've got a whole neighborhood that is against something like this, I think it behooves the council to support them. And the other red flag, which it just blew my mind, and I'm just going to mention it, this property sold for $175,000, and 1 month later it sold for $390,000 or $395,000. So it's obvious that it was sold to change it to a marijuana growing facility, even though it wasn't zoned for that. So for all of those reasons, I think indefinitely tabling this is the way to go. Thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counsel from Ward 5?
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, we're voting on the motion to table indefinitely, correct?
Madam Clerk, can you please read the motion?
Sure. The motion is to postpone the matter indefinitely.
Thank you.
Counsel from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Not too loudly. Thank you for your public input. We appreciate it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 9, amendments to the city policy manual regarding the appointment and promotion process in the fire department. Requested action to approve the amendments to the city policy manual number 29, appointment and promotion in the fire department, as recommended by the fire chief and human resources director.
May I have a motion?
Yes, I motion.
Councilor Pease?
Second.
Councilor Clement? Before council discussion, is there anything that you would like to say, Director Terrio?
Yeah, I just wanted to outline that for the promotional policy for the fire department, all we're looking to do is add in the pieces that we've already done as past practice. So we're looking to add some lines on the actual eligibility list that include what their scores were broken down, and to ask that anybody applying for this promotional exam also brings in their educational transcripts each time that they apply.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council discussion. Councilor Clement?
Mr. Mayor, I noticed the fire chief in the audience. Does he have anything he'd like to add to this, or? Don't mean to put him on the spot, but as long as he's here.
No, Councilor, there's just been, there's been some issues in the past about how the scores were posted. And there's some conflicting language about whether there would be names associated with test scores or educational credit. So this kind of clarifies some of that and cleans it up. It was requested by the bargaining unit, and we came to agreement on this new language that we would post scores by ID number only, and we would post them for a certain period of time. So I recommend that that we change the ordinance or the
This would
personnel policy.
Actually add a point of anonymity to the individuals until such time as the process is completed then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Further discussion from the council? Public comment on this agenda item? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed a vote of 6-0.
Agenda item number 10.
Item number 10, resolve accepting and appropriating local funding of $87,000 as the required 20% match to the federal dollars of $348,000 from the Heads Up Pedestrian Safety Project funding from the Maine Department of Transportation. Requested action, resolve accepting and appropriating local funding of $87,000 as the required 20% match to the federal dollars of $348,000 from the Heads Up Pedestrian Safety Project funding from the Maine Department of Transportation.
I have a motion. Councilor Harriman, followed by Councilor Pease. May I have your name, sir?
Hello, Jeff Boley, city engineer.
Oh, hello. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we start with public discussion?
Not unless you have any questions.
Discussion from the council or questions for the engineer? I'm sorry, your last name, sir?
Boley?
Moley, thank you.
Boley.
Public comment? Anything you'd like to add?
I can describe the projects if you'd like, or
Maybe briefly?
Briefly then, thank you.
sure. So, as they're explained in the agenda item, there's 3 separate projects here. One being Five Corners, which is Sabattis and Central, over by the middle school. That was the #1 project listed on the Heads Up pedestrian study that was done in 2019. So there's a $100,000 project there to upgrade the crosswalks. Then we have a second project to add a crossing at between Bierce and Montello, where there's a bus stop and a long distance between crossings on Main Street. That would be a crosswalk and rapid flashing beacons. And third project would be to upgrade Lisbon at Essex and Lisbon at East with ADA upgrades to the ramps and high visibility colored concrete crosswalks to highlight those crosswalks and make them more visible.
Thank you. Councilor Scott?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what I said last time. I'm glad to see that these projects are moving forward. Pedestrian safety in our community is very important to me. As a walker that, I mean, I walk everywhere, and we have a lot of issues with pedestrian safety, so I'm really happy to see this happening. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Likewise, I also walk a lot, and I walk through that Five Corners intersection several times a week, and I'm really excited to see improvements being made, and I hope that they can continue down Central towards the middle school, because there's issues with other intersections there as well.
There is a separate Heads Up project to address other issues there and education with the middle school. That was approved last year, so that's in process right now also.
Yeah, I think, and that's incorporating input from the students too.
Right.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Mary Ann about that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Further discussion from the council? Councilor Pease?
Yes, I think this is a great thing to do. But there was another area was brought up to me by former Mayor Larry Gilbert in reference to St. Peter and Paul's Church coming up Bartlett Street from the Sabattis side up, and the crosswalks coming down over the hill on Ash. Can be very tricky for these seniors. So if we can get that into the next project, it would be great.
We were just talking about that one this morning, actually. I just heard about that. So
Okay.
we'll be looking at it.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree that anything we do to make our city more pedestrian-friendly is a huge win for residents. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6 to 0.
Item number 11.
Item number 11, appointment to the Planning Board. Requested action to confirm the mayor's appointment of Lee Albert as a full member of the Planning Board, term to expire January 7th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Scott, followed by Counselor Harriman, followed by Counselor Scott. Thank you. And before, I'd just like to say a few words. I have known Lee and her husband, Albert, for quite some time now. And I know Dick and Diane as well. And, Lee is one of those rare individuals who can, has the ability to take into account details without losing perspective. And this comes in very handy at the planning board. She has basically single-handedly transformed the Bates admission process and department. And yes, and actually serves as kind of our de facto ambassador for the city as she visits high schools and around the country and around the world. I think she would be a great addition to planning and would bring a unique perspective. And now I'm opening it up for discussion. Councilor Harriman.
I just wanted to add that I haven't known Lee long. I met her at a candidate event last fall, but she seems like a great candidate, seems committed to the city. She's raising her family here, and she also will bring in more representation from the more rural parts of the city, being a Ward 6 resident. So I fully support the nomination.
Further discussion? Public comment? Back to the council. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Counselor from Ward 5?
No.
Ward 6?
No.
Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
No.
Ward 3?
Yes.
And and Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Vote receives a vote of 3 to 3, so the motion does not pass.
For the public's for the public benefit, all council votes need 4 votes to pass, regardless of whether we've met a quorum or not. Is that the correct way to state that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that is correct. Under the city charter regulations, any vote to pass the city council needs a minimum of 4 affirmative votes. Correct, yes.
Thank you. Next agenda item.
Sure. Well, also, Mr. Mayor, did you want us to note for the record the mayoral appointments that you have recently made?
Yes, please.
Sure. You have recently appointed to the Board of Appeals Edward Jawar, to the Historic Preservation Review Board Shanti Deshane and James Weber, Planning Board Associate Member Amy Smith, Board of Assessment Review Steve Morgan, and CDBG Homeless Advocate Andrew Finney.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I thank these individuals for serving. Madam Clerk, may I ask what agenda item we're on?
Sure, that's fine. Item number 12, reports and updates.
Perfect. Councilor Scott.
Thank you. I just want to report from the last school committee meeting that I was pleased to see that we are approving several field trips again for our students to visit colleges, and a lot of that was put on hold after COVID and some of the protocols that were put in place, so it was nice to see that we're bringing that back and we have a lot more kids going to these different events. We also voted on to approve to collaborate on an energy audit with the city, to coincide with the city's energy audit with the same company that'll be doing that, which is Johnson Controls, which I was also pleased to see happening because some of the energy in our schools, I think, is something that we really need to focus on. Looking at more of green schools, I think, is always a good thing. We did receive an update from the superintendent that we'll be working very soon on our missions, visions, and goals, and he is reaching out to the community as well as staff and students to see what priorities might be in respect to vision, mission, and goals. And I also wanted to report that on February 28th, Heather will be joining the school committee meeting, which I was also happy to hear, to discuss the upcoming budget and to help with any questions that the school committee may have on the budget. And that's all for right now. Thank you.
I have an update. And so our very own Madam Clerk, Kathy Monteo, she has recently been selected to serve on the Board of Directors for the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. She will be representing Region 1, which consists of 6 New England states along with New York. Your term will begin in May, correct?
Yes.
And you'll be sworn in at the association's national conference in Little Rock, Arkansas, of all places, you know, right next to the water. And you'll be serving a 3-year term. We could not be more proud of you. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, congratulations.
I think, you know, this is, you know, a wonderful reflection on, you know, the kind of career that you can have at our city. Thank you. Further updates from the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Clement?
at last night's meeting, your Finance Committee approved their recommendation. You'll see on March 1st on the LCIP as we start our budget season. So we're ahead of the curve on that. You should see it in writing. I think we're just waiting now for one more confirmation on corrections and amendments that were made to the original draft. So once that happens, it'll be published and forwarded to the council.
Thank you. Councilor Harriman?
The Housing Committee, we finalized the changes to the ordinance that we are proposing, and I believe that will come before the council at our next meeting for discussion and approval.
We all set with, I'm sorry, Councilor Pease.
I don't have an update, but I have something on the other business that affects the city.
That's not the current agenda item, is it, Madam Clerk?
We're on reports and updates. Item 13 is other business.
You'll need to wait just a moment.
Yep. No problem.
Next agenda item.
Item number 13, any other business councilors or others may have relating to Lewiston City Government.
Councilor
Mayor.
Pease.
Yes, I received a lengthy letter from the owner of Agora Grand up above, and she's having a lot of problems with homeless living there, in the bushes, leaving all kinds of things behind. It's just, she's having a hard time to rent it out to weddings when that's happening there. I know it's a hard thing to take care of, but the other issue she has is the fact that all the cars parked on Bate Street for quite a stretch. She's noticed a lot of them dealing there. I think we need to see about getting enforcement in that area or doing something to help clean that up. That's right in, it's right at our park. It's, you know, we need to clean it up. We need to do something.
Counselor, we will check with the police department and look at what steps we can take to assist with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Administrator Hunter. Councilor Scott?
Thank you. So there's something I've been wanting to bring up, and because of something that happened last week in a report that was in the Sun Journal about some violence that has been happening in our community, and particularly in my ward, a melee that was how it was labeled in the newspaper. And also, recently, we have been getting updates from our police department and seeing other news articles about a number of shootings and gunshot fires and this sort of thing. I have been getting an exorbitant amount of emails and phone calls from constituents in my ward, but also from other members of our community, to see if there's any way that we can address this. At our first city council meeting in January, we heard from our police chief and from the district attorney on the strains on our jails and court proceedings due to COVID. And with no end in sight that I'm seeing at this time, what I took from that presentation was that Lewiston needs to come up with new approaches to address safety that doesn't rely on systems beyond the city's controls. And so what I would like to do and what I would like to request is that we have our city administrator, as well as ourselves as councilors, our mayor, to challenge ourselves to brainstorm and think of actionable solutions that we can do to help curtail and stop some of the things that are happening in our community. I look at when we discuss economic development and solutions to increase businesses into our community, and I see that this discussion goes hand in hand with that, because I personally feel that we cannot have a strong economic development and new businesses coming in if we don't do something about some of the violence and some of the issues that we're seeing. I'm not sure everything that we can do on this. I would be willing to even think about putting together a committee as a council that we can bring all players to the table and have a discussion on different ways that we can look at, whether that's mentorship for our youth, whether it's different strategies that the police department can do. I don't have all the answers, but I do want to say that it is something that we need to do. And when I go to the school committee meeting next week, the week after that, I apologize, the 28th, I'm going to be making the same statement, because I think that it's very important that we have this discussion with not only ourselves and our police department, but with our superintendent of schools. We even include our kids in these conversations to figure out what we can do to help curtail what we see happening, and I see happening as a lifetime 53-year resident of Lewiston, an uptick in violence, in crimes, and other issues happening. And it's not just in our downtown. The things that have been happening recently have been happening outside of our downtown, and it's spreading, in my opinion, and we need to not be afraid to address it and do something about it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Clement?
Councilor Scott's point, just before leaving for the meeting tonight, I received a communique from a constituent addressing some of these same concerns. A while back, I don't know exactly what, but I believe myself and one other councilor have communicated with our deputy city administrator with an idea that we had, and I'm hoping that maybe there'll be an update. This was between the city, the police department, and our district attorney as to something we might be able to affect some change in. I have not heard anything back at this point. I'm in hopes that maybe that's something we can get an update on.
I know Chief St. Pierre was looking into that. I don't have an update yet for him. I know he was looking into a cost and the feasibility of adding a prosecutor solely for Lewiston cases.
Yep. I think this would be something that would help alleviate to the rest of the council and those people that are interested. We discussed the possibility, as it is always the case, I think, in the criminal justice system, be it the courts, be it the prosecutor, be it the police. We can always do more if we have more people. We don't have enough people. We can't check your doors because we don't have enough people. We can't prosecute cases because we don't have enough prosecutors. We can't put people in jail because we don't have enough jail space. Well, we've got to break that open somehow. This is one idea we've had. I would concur with Councilor Scott. That's one of the reasons that I decided to run 3 years ago. I don't like the image of Lewiston when it comes to things that are happening. We've had a number of shootings. We've had a number of stabbings. Granted, we're not at the scale yet of New York City or some of these other places, but God help us if we ever approach that scale, even from our perspective. So we need to get ahead of the curve and do something. And this communique I had tonight, in particular, called upon our mayor to lead the charge. I will be communicating back with the constituent and tell them that we certainly agree with the sentiment that was put forth, but I do think we need to have a discussion at some point. Perhaps we need to workshop this. Right off the bat, it's not a minor issue. It's something that continues to ferment, and it just grows bigger. It's like mold in the corner. It's starting to spread, and we've got to put some bleach on it and do it now. I thank you.
And if I might add, excuse me.
Sorry, 1 second. Deputy Administrator O'Malley, I know the police department was making progress on hiring officers or getting them back from the academy. Can you speak to that for me, please?
I can tell you that when I came over here, we were down 17 officers. I did speak with Chief St. Pierre the other day. He's down to, I believe, 7. There is a possibility of hiring another one or two in the next upcoming month or so, but we're still down officers. Not to the extent that we were, but our numbers are still not there where we'd like them to be, that we can focus on particular projects. Not saying that that can't be done, but it's still a work in progress in the hiring.
Thank you. I did actually have the opportunity, I guess I'll share this with the council now. I spoke with Chief St. Pierre today and, inquiring about, inquiring about how things currently are. And he seemed to express to me that, yes, things certainly could be better. We are currently holding our own at this point. But perhaps it may be worth a workshop to discuss that. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I bring this up now because I think about just what we're seeing recently. This is cold weather. We know how this goes. Warm weather, more actions, more things happen. It is something that has been on people's mind when I was knocking on doors and talking to constituents over the last year. One of the biggest things I heard from people was, what are we going to do about the uptick in violence? And why is it that there seems to be nobody on the city council that really wants to talk about it and address it? And I, for one, want to sit here and say that I think it's time that we talk about it and address it, because we need to do something about it sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Perhaps at this point, if it pleases the council, we could perhaps have a discussion with Chief St. Pierre about perhaps a presentation or workshop and, with some data. I think at this point, some recorded data and statistics would be helpful, just to, kind of give us an overall picture versus, I guess I want to make sure that we're making decisions based on actual data and not anecdotal stories. Councillor Pease.
Yes, correct me if I'm right. When the chief talked to us last time, he said that possibly getting 3 new officers, but that's not really adding to the force right off, because these new officers have to ride along with another officer?
Once the officers graduate from the academy, we have a 3-month, what we call a field training officer program, so it takes a while before they're actually able to ride on their own and respond. And it may have also been the fact that there are some retirements that are occurring and some resignations that have occurred or new were coming up. So unfortunately, we may have gotten 3 from the academy, but 3 had left. So we're just kind of, as he says to the mayor, holding our own.
Thank you.
I would also add that we are having trouble getting people at the academy due to space limitations.
Limited space. I know this last class, I think the state police had 11 slots, and we were only able, the city of Lewiston was only able to get 1 slot up there. So we're having difficulties getting the slots to send people up to the academy.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Am I able to say anything about it?
Or do we need to take public comment at this time?
You can, because it is any other business, councilors or others may have relating to Lewiston City Government, so you are able to take public comment at this time if you'd like.
Am I forced to take public comment?
The agenda does say councilors or others may have relating. We've never really defined others as staff or public. It just says others.
That's correct.
What's correct? We haven't defined, or?
We haven't defined it, so I would recommend that you take public comment on this, subject to the same public comment rules that we used earlier. So you're going to have to use the thing.
Yes, I guess please proceed.
I just wanted to say I work with the city of Lewiston a lot.
Can you please state your name and address again?
Tyler Netto, 10 Nimitz Street. I just want to say that I work with the city of Lewiston a lot, and it's a very, very busy city. I feel like as a resident there, they do need more officers. I almost feel like they need more additional officers than what they have, based off all the complaints you guys are getting, we get called in there all the time for the uptick in violence that's going on. And pretty much you need more enforcement, you need more bodies, and the other thing is the police department is, I know, working with them, they're doing the best that they can. A lot of it is the DA's office and the courts and the jails may need a little more pressure from some of the agencies like maybe the council or the mayor's office, what have you, to try to get more people sent to the jail or more cases reviewed a little more firmly, maybe, I'm not sure, but a lot of people are getting let out and they're committing the crimes over and over again. And the other thing is, I think having the committee about trying to figure out what to do is great. A lot of the people aren't even from Lewiston. It's people from outside of Lewiston that are coming in. And I think more enforcement action, more resources for the police department would really, really help them. Just from my perspective, I don't work there, but I work with them. We're shorthanded as well. The academy is a big problem. It's only so big, so they only can send so many people through. But Lewiston Police Department, for what I've worked with, has done a great job. I just feel like the more resources, the more help they can get, the better. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Further public comment? Councillor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lest the listening public or anybody here think that we don't support our police department, I think they're a great group of guys. They are working, and they are working hard. And many times it is like shoveling sand against the tide. I see it. I have seen it. I've been involved in it for many years. I'm currently involved in it as part of the criminal justice system. We do support them, but I think we need to do more. We need to help them stem the tide. We need to help the entire criminal justice system. It's not just the police department. It's a systemic situation throughout the criminal justice system that needs to be addressed. And, you know, if we don't do anything now, it's going to continue to grow. I know we have the option, and we can discuss this at a workshop. Maybe the council would entertain establishing an ad hoc committee to address the issue and sit down with the various players and see if we need to put pressure, if we need to bring thinking outside the box, whatever it is, into play to try and improve things. That would be part of moving Lewiston forward, in my estimation. I thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion from the council? Or any other new business at this point?
Would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
At this point, well, I was just simply going to add, based on the council's input and this evening, I'll place a phone call to Chief St. Pierre tomorrow morning. I guess motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Councillor Pease?
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Clement? Please call the vote.
Councillor from Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2?
Yes.
Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Motion passed by a vote of 6-0.
Good evening, Lewis, or good night, Lewiston. Have a wonderful night.